Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen out there. A very good afternoon to the president of Political University of Philippines, the deans, the department head, and the MC Ryan Rock. Thank you very much for inviting me for that show, and I'm delighted to be here this afternoon, shedding some light on the writing of research paper and thesis. Just to keep your expectation, a bit low, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a very novice researcher in nature. I'm just a student of research. I'm learning research. This is a journey that I am embarking on for quite some time, last 5-6 years. So whatever I have learned or went through my life as an academician, so I'll be sharing my thoughts, but definitely that's not the end of the world. I mean, that is what my opinion would be. Then definitely I respect all of your opinion and the way you think of. So this is what I'll be sharing with you all about a bit of knowledge about, how to write a research paper and a thesis. I mean, it will be go hands in hand. They will be together. And once again, I would like to share with you that this is an humble effort to share some of my knowledge that I earned for last couple of years. So definitely, I may not be the right person to do the justice to the topic. I think I repeat again, I may not be the right person to do justice to the topic, but definitely I will make an effort to shed some lights on that topic. I hope you will enjoy, and if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me out there, and I will try my best to answer your queries. And one more information that I would like to share up front is that basically this workshop is more than 3-4 hours. Mainly I do it for a half day, but since the time wouldn't permit me to go that long, so maybe I wouldn't be able to cover everything, but I'll just at least give you a skeleton and hope it helps. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. So to begin with, when you talk about the science of writing research papers and thesis, I would start with a very frank statement saying that nothing is absolutely right and wrong in social science. Basically, what I'll be focusing on basically today is social science. So nothing is absolutely correct or incorrect. So it's basically subjective and definitely with evidence. So what happens is that we collect data, we run the models, and we find a result. We find some results. So based on the results, we make some conclusions. But when somebody else collect the similar data, they might have a different conclusion. So we gotta be very careful about commenting when we comment a paper or on a findings. So what I usually follow, looking at a big shots in our field, is that they're very humble in terms of shedding light on the areas, so that we can't say that I'm the one who are doing everything right. So that is not a very right approach to go on with in academia. So ladies and gentlemen, with that quote, let me start what I have to offer. So first of all, definitely we all are here for different purpose. Some of us, I'm sure you are PhD students or master students. Some of us are faculty member, we need promotion. And some of us, we want to graduate. Some of us, we want to learn the research, right? So we all have a different intention to get things from this workshop or from anywhere we normally learn research, right? So basically, in the recent days, in 21st centuries, if you talk about any business school or any school, if you want to be an academician, so definitely what I got to be doing is that we have to have a good number of so-called index journal articles. So that is a prerequisite nowadays, I would say. Apart from having a PhD or any other degree like master's or MPhil, we also got to be having some publications. So that is one of the things that trigger us or motivate us to learn about research. The second thing, sometimes what happened, we already a faculty member, then we want to get promoted. Then we also need some kind of some number of publications, a good number of publications. So we also try, or that also motivate us to learn more about research and know the techniques of doing research to publish in a good journal, right? So what I believe is that apart from having this self-interest, whether you want to be a faculty member, whether you want to get a promotion, whether you want to graduate, whether you want to finish your PhD with publications, I think at the end of the day, this is an intangible asset to our life. Like, you know, an academic life, if you talk about an asset in an academic life, I would say that would be publication, the research. So that we can be proud of, or maybe that we can sell that, look, this is how rich you are. Academically, how rich you are. Normally, when you have, you know, when you look at the Bill Gates and all these rich people, we define them because they have huge amount of money. But when you are in academia, normally how rich you are in academically is basically, you know, looking at your research. It can be your articles, it can be your research grants, and so on and so forth. So therefore, they are very important, and that is not only an asset for an individual, but it also an asset for a department, for a faculty, and definitely for an university. That's how we can see that the universities are growing, the rank are being, you know, created based on publication and research, right? So looking at this one, some of you might be wondering here, sorry, to whom it matters. So I'll say it matters to everyone. Like it's like academicians like you, me, and all out there. And it also matters to universities. So basically, I would say it matters to almost everyone, because it also matters to a country. So for example, just to highlight that University of Malaya is recently been ranked at 59 in QS in the world. So definitely that is a good name for a country. So research not only help an individual, but it also help an institution. It also help a country to spread the name of, or the spread the beauty of the country. So I think in general, in a bigger picture, it does matter. That is in one sense, that just to beautify the country's name, one. Second thing is, when you see the COVID-19 and all these things, we all talk about research, right? We need to come up with these vaccines. So research does matter. What I wanted to mention is that whatever we have at the end of the day, whether we have Messi or Ronaldo and all sort of big shots, but at the end of the day, if we want to survive, if we want to make progress in our academic research or our medical research and all sorts of research, we need more researcher. And when we want to have more researcher, we need to have more training. We need to have more workshops. That's how it will create a research culture. And with that intention, with that belief, people like me who are very tiny, a novice researcher, is making some effort to share the thoughts. Um, the first thing that I would be emphasizing on before we move on how to write a paper or how to write a thesis, or what are the important things that we should include in a paper or in a thesis to be called as good thesis or good paper, I think we need to know what are the good journals. How do we, how do we relatively call them good journal or the index, right? And what factor basically help you to get into that journals? So I think the first things that we got to be understanding is that strategies does matter. Apart from having the merit of the paper, we also need to understand some of the strategies. We sometimes, to some extent, we also do have, I would say, to some extent, we have missing in our character. So sometimes we do have a good paper, we do have a good methodologies and all those things, but at the end of the day, we can't reach in top journal. Therefore, the strategies come handy. Why I'm saying so? Because sometimes even we have a groundbreaking idea, but then we have so many researchers out there, millions of researchers in all over the world, but we don't have that many, platform or that many outlets or that many journals that entertain. So what happened is that the competition is very, very steep and high. So when the competition is high, so you gotta be having some strategy. So the strategy will help you to win. So as you see the picture right on the right. So when you are having a paper, when you submit to a journal, you can see you have a few reviewers. They will, bid the paper from, head to toe, turn it out and ask you to review, change this, change that, right? So there are people out there who who give you feedback, who tell you that, look, this can be improved, this methodology doesn't look sound, or you can have proof, and this all. So since there are many researchers and millions of papers are being submitted to many journals, so what happens is that at the end of the journals, the good journals, they don't publish a very good number of articles. They have limited number of articles, so the competition is very high. Therefore we can see the tendency of having a lot of desk rejection, meaning when you submit the paper, the editor doesn't even send to the reviewer. They have a look and they reject the paper. So therefore we got to be knowing some strategy that how we can win the heart of the editor first. If we can win the heart of the editor, then surely at least this paper will goes through the reviewer's hands. So at least you have a 50% chance when it goes to reviewers, then you might get some feedbacks and all these things. But in many occasions, what happens is that the paper get rejected from the desk of the editor or chief editor or any editor, right? So we would be learning today there are some strategies, or I will be sharing some of the strategies which might be known to you all, but just to recap or re-emphasize those strategies to make our paper better, right? And remember, this is a game. Apart from having the merit and all this, I believe this is a zero-sum game, meaning like my paper is get rejected at the expenses of your acceptance. Means if my paper accepted, your paper will be rejected, or if your paper accepted, my paper will be rejected. So it's a zero-sum game. So therefore what happened is that we have a chance, but definitely we have to have some strategy. That strategy will help us to win over others. It is a war that we would like to win with the merit, with the strategy, right? Okay. However, what we believe, our professors, I heard from many professors, is that preparation does matter. Meaning to say that how we prepare the manuscript does matter. So sometimes what happens is that we are become a bit careless, in a sense that we have many other things to do as an academician, or maybe as a lecturer, as a PhD student. We have a lot of other things to do. So what happens? Sometimes we prepare the paper and we just send it to the journal, and we wait for the feedback. But the culture is such that nowadays the reviewer, the editor, they don't want to waste time. So what they do, if they don't see some merit in your paper, they reject. Immediately. It's a desk rejection, right? So therefore, we have to have some strategy, some preparation, so that at least we don't get desk rejection. If we don't get desk rejection, means some other people will be looking at your paper. The reviewer will be looking at your paper. So you have a high chance of getting some comments. So improve your paper or improve our paper. So I think therefore we need to have some strategies, and let's see what we can learn from that. So before we start knowing about some of the strategies of writing introduction, writing problem statement, writing thesis statement for a thesis, and all this, we would be knowing, or I would be sharing with you some of the things that we need to know about the manuscript, papers, and we need to know about journal, right, and their quality. If you look at this slide, what you can see here, basically there are different types of article. I'll go for the thesis after this, but let's share with you first the articles, right? There are different types of article, and different types of journals, their indexing, their business model, and definitely there are honorable citations. Means the citations that I would say not self citation. Some we see some journals have a lot of self citations, but some citations which we sometimes dishonor to some extent, that this journal has a lot of self citation, means I'm citing my own paper a lot. Okay, so this would be another issues. So let's see first that we have basically 4 or 5 types of paper. This is roughly, there can be many other types, but this is what we noticed. The first one is a concept paper. So if you are a PhD student, or you just started your research, a novice researcher like me, we can always have a concept paper. There is no issue with that. We can have a concept paper. So what is basically concept paper? This is a very short types of paper. It's like 2,500 to 3,000 word, right? And basically this is an idea, what you wanted to do. Based on the literature review, you got some idea, or based on practical experience, you got some idea. You put all the ideas together and you propose that, look, this is what can be done. So basically that would be a concept paper, what you wanted to do. You have no data, you have no analysis. It's just about your concept, your idea that you want to tell the world that, you know, the research can be done using this, or this can be investigated, or this idea can be investigated, right? The second one is a research paper, which is so-called the manuscript that we all basically work on. And this research paper, basically, they have data, and we run the analysis, and we write the results and all. But the good thing about this research paper, why it is very important, the research paper, because we create the literature. We cite literature, we read others' papers. At the same time, we have data, we run the analysis, we have some findings, and our findings is a literature for someone else, meaning we are creating literature. Like A has a relationship with B, or A is negatively related to B, meaning we are creating a literature. So that is the contribution part of the research paper. Basically, we have data and analysis. The third types of paper that we notice a lot about review papers. So you can see review papers are basically about, it can be meta review, now is a bibliometric paper, all are literature review types paper, meaning the authors, they read and review a range of articles from a same area or similar area. Then they propose some future, you know, research and all this. So these are getting popular, especially bibliometric paper, and also some other papers like meta review papers. They are getting very popular in a sense that some journal, they like these types of paper. Maybe probably one of the reason is that there are a lot of reviews of articles, so many people would like to cite these types of paper. So of course journal, they love to have more citations, so therefore you can see it has a popularity, right? Let me share a bit, if I hope it will come up. All right. Right. Okay, so basically you can see here a different, I don't know whether you can see or not. Right. Can anyone confirm me whether you can see me? See the slide, see the paper that I shared.
Hi, Dr. Raman. I can
Yeah.
still see your presentation material.
Right,
So
right.
I think we can stop sharing for a while, and then you can share again screen, choosing the paper that you would like to share.
Right, right. All right.
Okay, sir.
So
Thank
if you see,
you.
there's a difference between this research paper and review papers, right? So basically, how you propose, right? Research paper, right? You know, it purpose is basically to conduct and report the details, the original research findings, and of course, it also presents our author's unique investigation of a specific research. On the other hand, when you talk about a review paper, basically its purpose is to critically analyze the previous published literature. So what I want to say is that both are important. You can't say that no, review paper is not as good as a research paper, because a review paper also, I would say, have a lot of contribution in a sense that people can have a glance through and see the what are the things being already discussed, and it is a critical literature, right? So I think that's also very important in a sense. I don't know how to go from here. All right. Can you see my slide now?
Your presentation, sir. We can see the
All right.
okay, the research ecosystem. So it went back to the types of articles now.
Right. All right. Great. So I'll just go a bit faster here. So so then another one is the short communications. Normally what happens is that sometimes we find a very good findings, and we don't want to wait too long to publish that paper in a long length article. So what do? We just quickly make a summary, a very short paper, and we just want to publish in a journal, just to communicate with the journal that we have a good findings, and that can be a short paper, right? The other one is letters, which basically we comments on published article. Sometimes some authors, they published article on some methodology or some area, But say, for example, if I find that article has, I mean, I can debate with him or maybe contradictory, so I can also, have a different opinions. So sometimes some people also comment on the published article. So this is a culture, but that is normally done by professors, big professors, because a novice researcher like me, we don't dare to comment on someone else's paper yet, because we don't have that comprehensive knowledge yet. So what happens, some professors who worked for so long, they realize that this paper is somehow, I mean, maybe it has some doubt and all these things. So the professors make comments on that. So there's another types of papers. All right. So basically we have concept paper, we have research paper, we have review papers. It can be meta review, it can be bibliometric and all. We have short communications, and we have letters. So these are the types of papers we can write in any stage of our life, right? So this is encouraged, right? All right, now it comes to where to publish. If we know that I have, say for example, I have concept paper, or I have research paper, I have review paper, where to publish is very important, because we are doing a scientific work. So when we do a scientific work, I mean, it's reasonably fair for us to publish in a good platform. And when you talk about good platform, is very subjective. The word good is very subjective. Since it's very subjective and we are not very expert about that, so what we tend to follow is that we try to follow some index. So say for example, if it is indexed in Web of Science or SSCI, index, say for example, social science, right? Web of Science. If it is indexed in Web of Science, right? Then we feel like, okay, they are good journal, right? Or if it is indexed in Scopus, then we tend to say that they are good journal, right? And in Malaysia, we have another one. It's called My Site. In Malaysia, we have like journals, Malaysian journal, 225 journals, who are also public, hosting the publications for many also many areas of research, right? So when you go for Web of Science, you see, basically, if you go to Web of Science, and we can just search the journal in the area. If I search about finance, I'll get all the list of finance journals. If I just so that's why I think we can just easily search whether we can publish our article in Web of Science or not, or because they are considered good. That's how we, since we don't have much knowledge about it. Then Scopus. Then we also have peer-reviewed journal, and they are not indexed in either in Web of Science nor in Scopus, but they are indexed in peer-reviewed journal. And sometime, you also notice that in Emerald, in Elsevier, in Springer, in Wiley, some of the journals are not listed in Scopus or no Web of Science. It doesn't mean that they are bad journals. It's just that maybe they just started. It's a new journal, and they don't have much citation, so they are not, or they're yet to be indexed, right? So what happened is that normally we see the quality of the review, right? When you send out paper, we see that whether they are sending to reviewers, whether you get a reviewer comments or not. That's how we judge it. So I think I'm personally, I don't like to judge. What I feel is like this is just a process. We as long as there are reviewers, and apart from my eyes, some another 2 or 3 pairs of eyes are looking at my paper, giving some comments, I'm happy about it. So I'll incorporate the comment and I will resubmit. So that is normally many peer reviewed journal which are not indexed. Another type of journal that that basically people say it's a questionable journal. They are called predatory in nature. Predatory means like it is linked to the money, meaning to say the cash is king. Means if you pay the money, basically they publish. And in many occasions, you don't see the reviewer. Maybe you just submit today, and another few days time, the editor will accept the paper. So it's only my eyes is looking at my paper, no reviewers. Means another 2 or 3 pairs of eyes are not really looking at that paper. So I don't really get comment to improve my paper. So that is the bad, that is not bad, I would say, that is the sad part. So when we publish in a predatory journal, I would say that is the sad part, that we don't have a chances to improve our paper in many occasions because we don't get review. We don't get reviewers comment. Most of the cases, I'm saying not all time. Most of the cases we don't get review. So therefore, if possible, we can avoid these predatory journals because we don't get review. We don't have chance to improve our paper. And imagine we are a novice researcher, and we don't have a chance to improve the paper. Means like we are not getting corrected. So therefore, it's better to send in a journal that has a proper review process, so that our paper get improved, we get a better idea, we get a better methodology, or we get appropriate methodology. So we learn, because the whole process of publishing is a learning process, I believe. Yes, we are doing research. We are, in one sense, scientists, but I would say social scientists, and we are learning. There, as I said, there's no absolute right and wrong because it's subjective. All right. So one of the predatory that we normally in many occasions we talk about is Bales list. Many people said if it's a guy who basically listed the journal. So you may check whether the journal that you are targeting to send your paper are listed in Bales or not. In many countries, this Bales list are considered have a questions, a questionable journal. So this since they are questionable journal, so you might avoid sending papers in those journals. But of course, this is done by a guy Bales, so you are not so sure that how right is that guy. So of course there are some questions, there are some school of thought, there's a debate out there. So I'll say still maybe we have to be a bit critical about it. We have to know about it. We have to know about the journal, about which journal you are sending, right? So apart from this Web of Science, Scopus, normal peer-reviewed journal, we also have a different ranking. If you say, many of you surely know about it. One called ABS ranked journal, another is ABDC ranked journal. So we have Association of Business Schools. They rank the journal like 4-star, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this means 4-star means a world elite journals like Journal of Finance, for example, right? ABDC also, they have like Australian Business Dance Council, they have their ranking. So they also call A-star. Like they don't call 4-star, they call A-star. A-star means this is the best journal in the field, right? So different bodies in all over the world, they have some ways of ranking the journals. So at the end of the day, what they want to make sure is that whether you are submitting paper in a peer-reviewed journal or not. That is very important, because if the paper is not get reviewed, then surely we are losing opportunity to improve our paper. This is how I see. This is how I see from my point of view, that forgetting about bad or good, what people will say, what I feel bad about it is that when I submit in a predatory journal, sometimes there is no reviewer, so I don't get chance to improve my paper. Maybe there are a lot of mistakes there, and it's published, and people might be misleaded or misguided by my paper. But when we have reviewers, when we submit in a good journal, then they have reviewers. So the reviewers basically, when the many other eyes are looking at your paper, so they can find out the mistakes. So that's how we can improve the paper. So that is another point of view that I believe. All right. I'll not go so many other things. All right. Now let's come to, since we know a bit about the journals, like where to submit, what are the like index and all. Let's learn about the heart of the, I would say, either a paper or a thesis. What we should have when you want to write a paper, being a very novice researcher, what we should think about it. What should be the first step about it? I mean, how do we go about it? Say, for example, I just got my MPhil or master's. I want to do a PhD, or I'm just a novice researcher or faculty member. I want to start writing a paper. So what I feel, maybe this ecosystem that I try to develop something, putting together, might help us. So I believe like many other things. When you go to jungle, then we can see there's a land, there is a river, the animals all are living together, right? That's what it makes it a beautiful jungle, right? So similarly, when you write a paper has many parts. It has introduction, it has a literature review, it has a method, it has a data, and it also results, the implications, all these things, right? So what happened is that in many occasions, what we notice, and many professors suggested, is that they are not well connected. When they are not well connected, the ecosystem is broken. So when ecosystem is broken, then definitely that we can't call that as beautiful jungle or beautiful paper. So therefore, we should have a good ecosystem in a paper. So what should be the mother? What should be the mother of the ecosystem? The heart of the paper is basically the problem that you want to address, the problem that you want to solve through your research, the problem that need to be addressed. So sometimes we have the data, we have the results, but we did not really answer that problem, or we did not really address the problem by our results. So that there are some inconsistency that we notice in many occasions, right? So let's look at what is this ecosystem is all about. So I believe this ecosystem is basically based on problem statement. So when you have a good problem statement, means you identify the problem, an academic problem or practical problem, and you want to investigate, you want to know why it is happening, what factors influencing, and what should be done, and then we can address this problem, right? So from this problem statement, you can derive the title. In many occasions, what we notice is that sometimes we start doing a research with the title. So when you start doing research with the title, sometimes we keep changing with our working title. But what I was wondering, if we start with a problem, and the problem can give birth of a title, from the problem we can derive a title. Even from the problem we can, if we understand the problem, then we can write an abstract, beautiful abstract. Because in basically the abstract of a paper or a thesis consists of what? Research objective, what method you use, what is your findings, and policy implications, right? So if you know the problem, and the problem will give birth of also research questions, right? Because when you divide the problems into small parts, it becomes a research question, right? When a big problem, say for example, COVID-19, this became a this hurting economy, people are dying because of this COVID-19 and all these things. So this is a big problem. And then we break it down into questions to address this problem. Means, so basically what is the symptom, how to avoid these symptoms, how it is spreading, so how can we stop spreading, what can be done to spread the COVID-19. So this is the questions, and that will be solving the problem of COVID-19. So we notice that if we have a concrete problem, we can have research questions, and definitely research questions and research objective, they are merely the same thing. It's just one with the question marks, another one with not question marks, right? So another things, when you write a thesis, this problem statement or research questions will give you another statement. It's called thesis statement. Later on, I'll share with you what is thesis statements, which is very, very important for a thesis, very, very important for a paper, but especially very, very important for a thesis. Why I say so? Because let me just share a bit of this, then it might be clear what is thesis statement. When you go to shopping mall or many places, you can see a prototype of the housing, right? Like maybe 20-story building or condominium or housing. They are showing a structure, right? A prototype. So you look, sir, you can buy this house. This is our house. They are showing a structure. And even, the rooms, everything, all nicely, it seems like exactly real house, but in a small, like a toys, right? So when you go there, they will show you this one, and they want to sell the house, right? So exactly, thesis statement is like a prototype that you need to have in your mind or on your paper to to show your supervisor, to convince your supervisor. You need to tell, look, professor, or look, sir, or even reviewers, when you write a paper, look, this is what I wanted to do, and this will be, I mean, this is the structure. The thesis will look like this. Like the guy say the house will look like this. Actually, same, you can say the thesis will look like this. So this is how we can convince, and I will later on share with you how to write the thesis statement and how to write the problem statement based on my knowledge, which you might have a different way of writing, and I respect your thought and your knowledge. This is my tiny knowledge. I will try to share with you later that how to write a problem statement and a thesis statement from my point of view, right? So when you identify your research questions and your problem, basically it gets a bit easier for you to know what method you are going to use it. When you know your research problem, when you know your problem statement, when you know your research questions, it's easier for you to identify what method you are going to use. What research method? Is it quantitative or it is qualitative? So that how you will be able to do that, right? So basically, if you look at the causal relationship, right, then of course it will be quantitative. If you want to explore a phenomena that not really understood by other one, or nobody has really looked at that issues, and you want to know the phenomena, then of course you can do for qualitative. And once you know the quantity and quality, right? Once you know the quantity and quality, then definitely you will also know the what techniques you will be using, where you get the data. Because once you know the method, once you know the problem and your objectives, so you need to know what data you should use to achieve your objectives and solve the problem. So the data, basically, if you look at for the quantitative, we have cross-sectional data, we have time series data, panel data. They're basically secondary data. That's another quantitative can be by doing survey also a quantitative. All right, so because you get survey, then you analyze. And the second way is basically a secondary data that we have, cross-sectional, time series, and panel data, and we model it, we run it, and we get results, right? So when it comes to qualitative, basically how we get the data, what type of data we use data basically about like that we get from interview, focus group discussion, which is called FGD, observation, case study, right? And when we have like secondary data for the quantitative or the primary data for the quantitative, what are the analysis we do? We do separate correlation, regression, comparison of means, right? Similarly, for the qualitative data, we also analyze using a lot of softwares like NVivo and all, which is basically chi-square test, classification data into patterns, right? We also do manual analysis to see the pattern, right? So what I wanted to focus in this slide is basically, if you know your problem statement, if you know your research questions, and then it should be linked with the method, it should be linked with the data, it should be linked with your analysis. So meaning once you identify your problem, you should be able to identify your research questions. And your research questions and research objective should give you should guide you about the method that you should be using and what data you should be using, what techniques you will be using. So if you can't really decide which method you should be using, what data you should collect, meaning we are not very clear about the problem statement. So it always tied to me, this is from my point of view, it's always tied to the research problem. So sometimes what happens is that we are not very sure about the research problem, right? Now, I'll just share a bit about the research problem, right? And the problem statements. So what is basically research problem? How do we know this is a research problem, right? So basically, it is a situation that needs a solution and for which there are possible solutions, right? Remember, if you find a problem, but it doesn't have a possible solution, that is not a problem. Say, for example, how people can live forever. How people can live forever, which is almost impossible, right? Or makes no sense or very little sense. So this is not a problem. We shouldn't do research about it. Yeah, because it doesn't have a possible solution. So therefore, when you find any research problem or any academic problem or practical problem that you want to investigate on, then you have to find out first whether this research problem has a possible solution or not. Right. So basically, how do you define it? So the research problem can be defined as a discrepancy between what is and what ought to be, what should be, meaning what is going on now and what it should be, right? So if that's why you want to do the research, meaning, so for example, not everybody is in the and nowadays, because of the COVID-19, we're not really going out, for shopping. We are not really going for work and all this, right? So that is what is the situation, but it should not be, right? It should be something else. Means like we should be working, freely moving and all, right? So why we are not doing it? Because of this COVID-19. So, like it is something, that's why we call COVID-19 is a problem. Why is a problem? Because what is now and what it should be is different. If there is no difference, then that is not a problem, right? Now the question is, when you identify a research problem, how do we write about problem statement? Remember, when you talk about a problem statement, basically it should be one single statement. I mean, it can, many people or many school of thought says it can be one single statement supporting by few sentences or few paragraphs. So basically it can be one single sentence, right? So therefore, what we believe that we need to be careful about this. Sometimes what we do, we just we just collect the issues, we put it together, and we say, look, this is our research problem, or this is a problem statement. Not necessarily. That may not be a appropriate way of doing so. So let's see, like to be very specific, what is problem statement? A good problem statement can be just one sentence accompanied by few paragraphs that present convincing argument to make the problem important enough to study. You understand what I mean? What I mean is that, like, a problem should be important enough to study. There are many small problems, but that may not be, important enough to do a PhD or to write a good paper, right? So let's see what can be the maybe one of the good example of the problem statement. Let's see the next sentence that you can see here. The frequency of job layoffs is creating fear and a loss of productivity in middle of management in middle management workers, right? The frequency of job layoffs is creating fear and a loss of productivity in middle management workers. So this is a that you are saying about the problem. Then you can bring some evidences, some facts and figures to support, right? So a well-articulated problem statement basically inculcates a foundation for everything, and thus there should be no surprises in the process of carrying out the entire study. Meaning to say that if you have a good problem statement, you should not be facing any problem in deciding what is your methodology, what should be your methodology, what analysis you should use, what should be your data, what data you should consider. No. If you have a very good concrete problem statement, that should somehow will give you a direction and you will not have any surprises. But sometimes what happens is that we always, in decision, we go to our supervisor or our reviewers or our colleagues, we discuss about what method I should use, because sometimes we are not very clear about our problem statement, right? Another good point that we can consider is that if we read the literature and we find the answer for a problem, meaning we should not do research about it. If literature has the answer, if literature review, when you do a literature review, you found the answer for your problem, then you should not do the research. That's why doing literature review thoroughly, comprehensively is very, very important. Because remember, at the end of the day, we are doing academic research. Most of us, we are doing academic research. We are not doing action research or like industry, market-based research. We're not doing that. What we are doing is basically academic research. When you do academic literature study or research, a very important part is the literature. So we always have to go back to literature. Whenever we have a question in our mind, whenever we see a problem and we want to do research, the first things we need to do is that we need to go back to literature. We have to find whether literature already has answer or not. If no, then we can do research, right? So that is the first point that we can be going through, right? So I think I'll be, due to time constraint, I may not be going very deep. So how to find a research problem? Basically, I'll just go an overall one. You can later on, I'll share the slide. You can just read. So how to find a research problem? You're just starting a research. You never did any research. So how you will start? How do you find the problem, right? All the way we're talking about the problem statement is very important. Research problem is very important. The question is how to find research problem. Normally what we do is that we look around the the people's life, the industry, the firms, everything. We look around and we see some issues, the daily life issues. We see some newspaper highlighting some problems, right? So then what we do when we see all these problems, we have to like narrow it down. All right, so these are the issues now in about the stock market or about the food industry, say for example, or due to COVID-19, we don't the farmer couldn't sometimes couldn't produce many goods and services, so there might be a shortage of goods. So then you narrow it down and you try to see whether there is any literature about it, whether they talk about any other crisis that have a food problem. And then you see what literature suggests. Then you slowly narrow it down. They frame your research problem in a concrete way, right? So you can read further to get more ideas. I will not be giving I wouldn't have time to cover all right. So let's see, let me give you some example of problem statement, right? What are the things that we should have in the problem statement? This is a single statement. It can be a single problem statement, can be a single statement with many supporting statements or supporting I think paragraphs, right? So what should we have in the problem statement? The first thing, it should have at least 5 things in the problem statement. 5 things that should be in the problem statement. So what are the 5 things? The first thing is area of concern. You have to talk about the area of concern, not about the specific topic that you are working on. First, you have to talk about area of concern. Let me give you an example. Like brain drain is increasing in Bangladesh, right? Brain drain is increasing in Bangladesh. This is area of concern, a big picture, right? This is the bigger picture. The brain drain is increasing in Bangladesh. So you are identifying a general problem. This is not your specific problem, but you have to put it because this is an area of concern. Because people can see that you are going to do something about brain drain. Okay, so people will have an idea, general idea. So you have to start with like this: the brain drain is increasing in Bangladesh. So you're identifying the general problem. This is called area of concern. The second thing that you should have in your problem statement is called a specific problem proposed for research. Like what? Every year about 2,000 professionals migrate. Did you see the point? The first one, you talk about general, the brain drain is increasing in Bangladesh, but we did not give any facts. We did not give any figure. We just generalize. We say brain drain is increasing. Then the second one, we are going very specific. We said every year about 2,000 professionals migrate. So you already have a very specific, area, which is about, and with the facts and figures. So you are providing some facts and figures. So sometimes what happens, we say there is a problem, but we don't give facts and figures. So whenever you give a general statement, you have to give the second line, in the same sentence, you also have to give some facts and figures, right? After the facts and figures, what you also need to add in the problem statement, right, is the gap in the existing knowledge, or a deviation in the norm or standard that points to the end for future understanding or investigation. Means you have to spot the gap. How? So for example, the brain drain is different from previous shortage because it involves not only fresh graduate but also seasoned professional. Yeah, so you can see the first one, area of concern, we said brain drain is increasing in Bangladesh, general. Second, every year about 2,000 professional migrate. This is more specific. Now we are saying, look, last time people talk about brain drain for different crowd, but this time what we are doing is the gap, right? So we are talking about not only talking about the fresh graduate, but we also talk about seasoned professional. Maybe there are some study they already considered the fresh graduate. So there is no gap. Is a problem, but there is no gap. Somebody already addressed. But now what we are saying is that it's not only involve fresh graduate, but also seasoned professional. You see, so we have to highlight few things. Area of concern, a specific problem, then the gap. Then the fourth thing is that you have to propose a method to solve, because you have to know there's a possible solution. And how do you come up with that possible solution is basically having a method and a data. So what do you say? You can write this quantitative study will examine, you see, either you say this quantitative or this qualitative or this case study, you can specifically tell this case study will examine this to find the problem. The fifth one that we should have is that basically state the purpose, scope of the study, and the subject that has been proposed to be studied. Meaning to say, for example, like we will explore the perception of professionals in Bangladesh. See here? So that's what we do. So first we say brain drain is increasing in Bangladesh. Second, we said every year about 2,000 professionals migrate. Then we said this study, we are not only looking at fresh graduate, but we're also looking at professional, seasoned professional, which is a gap. Then we said we will be using quantitative study to examine this, and who will be our subject? Our subject matters will be professionals, right, in Bangladesh. So you can see if these are the 5 things there, then it somehow addressing all the aspects that should have been in the problem statement, right? So this is a template of the problem statement. If some of you are wondering that how should I start writing the problem statement, you can also, and this is just an example, right? This is just an example. You can just see it, you can just follow a similar trend or similar format. So for example, look at this with the first one. For many years, you can start like that. For many years, people have debated about so and so. Dash has been controversial because of this and this, right? Or something has dominated the discussion of all the controversials. So you can put something, like this can be a starting line for many years, people. Or this is like stable context. Another one can be, another format can be, it's called status quo, meaning to say many people think this is right. At the first glance, it may seem like this is the right way. This initial perception failed to take into account this and this. The means status quo. You are challenging the status quo. Many people believe this is right. However, these things are not being, these are not being considered. Therefore, we need to do research. Or people fail to notice that there's the issue. So therefore, we want to do it. You see, this is called status quo types. The other types of problem statement that you can start is called consequences. Meaning, sometimes we keep doing the same things forever. We don't want to really change it. So what happened? It will have a consequence, right? So how you can start the problem statement? If we continue to believe that smoking will not harm, we will never understand the larger question of life, say for example. Unless we change people's habit about smoking, we cannot control the cancer, say for example. So we're talking about consequences. If something is, we are doing something, if we don't stop doing it, then there will be a problem, right? So I think I can just you can see a sample here. I think later on I will be sharing with you. Maybe this is a qualitative problem statement. And just now I mentioned about that when you write a problem statement, what are the things you should have? General problem, right? Then second one is specific problem with numbers, like some citations, right? The third one is you can be more specific. Then you talk about the types of study you will be doing. Then what is the subject matter, means who you will be studying on. Is it firms? Is it individual people? Is it a group people? What? And what is the area of your study, the scope of the study. So basically, if you look at this problem, like brain drain in Bangladesh is increasing. This is a general problem, so this can be a problem, research problem, basically, right? A qualitative problem statement. You see, it's basically one idea, but you are extending it, right? So like brain drain in Bangladesh is increasing. This is a general problem. Every year, about 2,000 professionals migrate abroad due to unsatisfactory working condition. See, so you already identify the problem. Then this brain drain is different from previous shortage because it involves not only fresh graduate but also seasoned professional. So you can quote it. Earlier, you see, we mentioned 2,000 professional migrate abroad every year. See, it means you are giving facts and figures, right? So this crisis in professionals industry requires innovation solution. One innovation solution may be a less structured leadership style. You see, means you also have a solution. You also have a possible solution. Ladies and gentlemen, if you notice that, like, we can call something as a research problem if it has a possible solution. If we do not have a possible solution, we cannot go further with that research problem. It will be difficult for us to justify, right? Okay, so this is a qualitative research problem. The second one is this is a quantitative research problem, right? Quantitative statement of problem. So I think I will not go much because then it will be a lengthier one, right? Okay, so you can later on read and get back to me if you have. All right. Now I'll just go a bit of the thesis because some of you might be doing PhD thesis and all. So this is another one, is apart from problem statement, this is another one which is very, very important for a thesis, PhD thesis especially, right? It's called thesis statement. So look at the house I shared beside. Basically, this is a prototype, right? A prototype. So the people might show you this picture and say, okay, do you want to buy a house? Actually, this will be like this. So problem, thesis statement is similar things. When you go to your supervisor, you also, you keep something in your mind and you say, Prof, this is what I want to do. This is what my thesis will look like. So, so that is a basic thesis statement. So how do you write? What is thesis statement? Let's get some definition and how to write a thesis statement. So basically, thesis statement tells us how our thesis solved the problem and plugs the gap that we have identified from literature review. You understand what I mean? Means problem statement is basically identifying problem from literature and practical life. On the other hand, thesis statement is basically tell you how our thesis is going to solve the problem and plugs the gap that we have identified from the literature review. So you can have both together, problem statement and also thesis statement. So thesis statement is basically telling the world or telling the supervisor or telling yourself. You can tell yourself that this is how I'm going to solve the problem and going to, fill up the gaps, right? So a good thesis statement is just one sentence, describe the epistemology. What is epistemology? How we know what we know, right? Many times we know, say for example, why A is going to shopping mall or B is going to shopping mall. We know why, but we cannot tell the world because we have no like scientific evidences, right? In many times we know why these things happen, but we can't tell or we cannot write it because we don't have the evidences. So we do research, right, to prove it. Similarly, many times we know this is the answer for this, but we have to make it scientific to do research. That's why thesis statement is basically, it guide you it basically solves the problem and show you the roads map, right? All right. So what can comprise as a thesis statements, or what are the things that should be in the thesis statement? Basically, there are three things: main idea of research, transition word, and reason of research. So these three things, if we put these three things, it might be wonderful. So for example, look at the example one. Being involved in the community is important because it helps people stay connected and give people pride in their community. See, being involved in the community, this is the main idea of the research. You're talking about something about, society and involvement. So being involved in the community is important. So that is the main idea of the research. What is transitional word? Because. Then reason of the research, it helps people stay connected and give people pride in their community. So you can see this can be a thesis statement. All right, I think I will not spend much time. This is a good and bad thesis statement. Some are too broad, we don't have the solution, or some are too narrow, some are off to the topic, right? Right. So now I'll move it to the next part, which is about basically, so far I talked about a bit of, the heart of the thesis or heart of the paper, which is basically problem statement and thesis statement, which are very important to know and very, I think, this is the heart of a thesis or paper. So we must have the heart to to have a live thesis, right? All right. So this is some of the strategies that I believe that will improve the chances of publishing in SSCI, Scopus, or other index journals, right? Some tips and tricks you can say, right, for the manuscript constructions, right? Look at this one. In many occasions, we decide like we think or we give a second thought, like, I mean, how long the title should be of a paper, right? So, so the best things that we notice, or many people suggested, many professors suggest, is that it can be 10 to 15 words. The title should be very clear and focused. Sometimes we have a too long title, which is also, sometimes some of the editors maybe find it, people may not be interested because it's too long and not addressing everything or not very clear. So therefore, I think we can make it shorter and sweeter. Like, say, just let me give an example, like, does culture affect economic outcome? It can be. It can be a title with the question mark. Does culture affect economic outcome? Or even the second one, see, a bit longer, but still it does make sense. Like, the allure, the risk, the opportunity and risk of moving toward cashless Malaysia, stakeholder perspective. So that another way. So that can be the title, which should be short in nature. The next one, I'll talk about the abstract. There are different types of abstracts, of course, structured, unstructured abstracts, right? But mostly what we notice, abstract is basically 150 to 300 words. Nowadays, I can see 100 words, 150. Previously, it was 200 to 250 to 300 or 200. Now, even shorter, because people are thinking about the space of the journal, right? And normally we don't put citation, no equation, right? And look at this one, the right. If you look at the right side, what are the specific part that we should have in the abstract, right? So basically, the topic sentence, the first sentence, which is a topic sentence. The second was the research objective. RO is the research objective. Then we very like one sentence we talk about method. Then we talk about 2 or 3 sentences about findings, and then any policy implications. So I think that can be a good abstract, which is like basically we'll be having a topic, research question or research objective, method, findings, and a contribution or policy implication, right? Let's see an example. I think we can have an example. Look at this. Somehow I'll be showing my papers. Look at a few journal article here. One is Emerald, the on my left one. You can see this is called a structured abstract, meaning it has a purpose, design, findings. So you have to upfront mention what is the purpose and all. This is structured abstract. On my right, which is in the social indicator journal, published in social indicator journals, you can see this is not structured. You don't have to mention the purpose, design, method. Just write it. Like, start with the objectives, then method, then findings, then implications, right? The another one, what do I mean by different school of thought? There are American, and they're also, I would say, British, or different way of writing. So in American journals, basically, they love direct way of writing. Like, look at the last abstract I shared. You see, the cognitive reflection test and behavioral bias in Malaysia. Look how we started writing. We ask whether behavioral biases are related to cognitive abilities. You see, we use all this. But if you look at the social indicators, we don't use we in the abstract. What do you write? Religiosity is a significant cultural force. So we don't use I and we. So therefore, I would say when you target a journal, I think it's better to read few articles from that journal. Look at the style they wrote. Is it like American types writing, or like British types writings, or different school of thought? What I mean is the American, British means is a different school of thought. So some like to write in a like we, and some they just write this has been found. Some says we found it. This study found it. So different ways. So we have structured, like the left one. You can see the emerald one, the purpose, design. Another one is non-structured, and we also have different way of writing. Some are like directly writing like we, and some are writing like this. All right. Okay. So I'll move on. Sorry. So I have to go. Oops. Oh. Sorry for the interruptions. All right. So now let's go for the introduction. I think this is a very important part for paper and also a thesis, the introduction. So how should we start writing introduction? What should be in the introduction? So I think that are very important. So what I noticed based on my understanding, based on my reading, is basically it should be like um, from broad to narrow. You see, look at this one, the right side one. If you notice, known to unknown and general to specific. If you note the blue color image, if you can see here, known to unknown and general to specific. So you have to start with the big idea, background, something about COVID-19, then why this is a pandemic, is these issues are being, then slowly what is the purpose. So known to unknown, right? Background, problem, and purpose. And when you write conclusion is opposite, from unknown to, sorry, this is known to unknown, then from here we just propose for the unknown later. I'll share in the conclusion. So in introduction, basically we go from very general to specific. Let's see what are the things we should have in the introduction. The basic information about the research topic, like general, right, known to unknown. Highlight the problem and unsatisfactory current solution. Cite evidences, the purpose, what you hope to achieve to address the current problem. Let me give you an example. The first paragraph can be like this. Over the past 5 years, social media usage has risen consistently. Many studies have investigated social media usage in Generation Y, but few studies have looked at social media usage among secondary school children. The heavy use of social media by secondary school children is causing anxiety among parents. They now spend up to 9 hours a day on social platform, while 30% of all the time spent online is now allocated in social media interactions. So what you notice it here, look, unknown, the green one is unknown, right? See, over the past 5 years, social media usage has risen. So you're telling a general problem, and then you are giving statistics. You see the statistics here, like 9 hours a day, 30% of all their time they are spending on social media. So we have to have some facts and figures apart from the literature review. Sometimes we think we always cite the literature review, but we also can cite some facts and figures from the statistics department, from the gender studies and all types of things. We can do also surveys data. We can also cite it, right? So after mentioning all these things, what we do? However, it remains unclear what factors influence. You see, this is a magical word that we should be using. However, it remains unclear what factors influence, or however, a very little is known about how behavioral factor affects. So we tell all the situations, then we say, however, it remains unclear. See, it's not very strong word. Sometimes, we write in our paper or in a thesis that nobody has done it, that's why I'm doing it. None of the study has covered this. Actually, I think this is a very too strong. So what we can say, after all the problems and statistics, you say like, however, it remains unclear, or very little is known about these issues. So therefore, so what do you do? Therefore, this study aims, right? So I think these are the things. I have some examples. Although I don't know whether I can reach this. Oh, sorry, maybe not. This is one of the research problem last time I did, and I have one in introductions. Maybe later on, if you want, I can even share with you that how I started. Even this is a research project that I got from AMIA, Malaysian Institute of Accounting. So this is one of the things. So I'll share with you basically how I start writing that introduction, right? Right. Oh, sorry, class again. All right. Sorry. Okay. Then we go for literature review. After the introductions, we should have a literature review, and we should be doing a very critical literature review. Sometimes what we do, we summarize. We just say A said this, B said this, C said this, that's it. But what is critical literature review is not about summarizing. It's about A said this, but B has criticized, C said something else, D said something else. So therefore, we want to do this, right? So remember, literature review is also like a data collection and analysis. We can publish paper using literature review. So therefore, literature review is very, very important. It's not just like we have to do it for the sake of doing. No, literature review is basically, making the ground or foundation of your research. It either it is a research paper or thesis. It can be the foundation. So therefore, literature review is very important, and we have to consider literature review as like a data collection, and we have to be very careful about doing the literature and analysis, right? This is, and it should be very systematic in nature. So basically, literature review can be, I'll say there are many types, and we have to be very critical in nature that literature review should be done on topical, means the topic that you are covering, the theory that you are covering, the method that you are covering, and the findings that you found, then other people's found it. So sometimes what happened, we do literature review only about our topical. It's called topical literature review. We don't focus really about theoretical. Sometimes we ignore a bit of methodological. No, basically what I found, or what I noticed many good professors do in their paper, is that they cover the literature review in a very comprehensive manner. They talk about the topic from different, what are the people worked about the topic, what they found, what theory they use, what method they use, very rigorously. They use all those things, then they come up with a problem, then they come up with objective, right? All right. Okay, the next one is materials and method. Sometimes the question is which method is appropriate. It's very difficult to sometimes identify the right method, because being a novice, sometimes we are not very sure. And data source, which data source we should use, is it reliable? Not. Then the second thing comes, which softwares we should use, which techniques we should use, right? All sort of things are coming. But remember, above all these things, what I found, whatever we do, we should write in a way that people can simply replicate. Because if the readers cannot understand what we do and how we have done the analysis, then it loses the merit of the paper, or it loses merit of the thesis. So we have to make in a way, or we have to propose, or we have to show the materials in a way, or method in a way that people can, a layman can replicate, right? So when you talk about appropriate method, of course I will say different study has different method. Like we have empirical papers, we have case study papers, we have methodological paper, we have theoretical papers, right? So when we go for that any types of papers, then we will see what are the people used in that. And remember, sometimes nowadays we feel like using bombastic types of very mathematical types of methodology will make things better. Not necessarily. If you can answer your research objective by doing a simple t-test, if you can achieve the answer or the objective one by the t-test, then do t-test. You don't have to do a very complicated one. No. So because the purpose of method is to find the answer by using or analyzing the data, right? So however, we have many softwares nowadays. We know SPSS, eViews, Stata, R, M+, SAS. And for the primary data, we use SPSS, Smart PLS, right? Smart PLS, and SM is just analysis, is an equations. So basically Smart PLS and AMOS, right? So after the materials and method, what we do is basically results and discussions. So in many occasions, results and discussion become very dry, because we do not really tie to the objectives. Sometimes we just simply explain the results rather than tying it to our objectives, tying it to a problem. The results that we found, are they really addressing the problem? Are they really helping out to reach the objectives, right? Sometimes we simply put a lot of figures and tables. Even in the thesis, we put a lot of figures and tables, but we don't explain that figures or tables. So the tables and the figures become dry. It doesn't have any story. So apart from having the findings, we also have to create a story, I would say a flow that will make sense for the people. So sometimes that results and discussions get dry, and that's why we feel like many occasions they are not, I mean, many people reject our paper, right? So just now we talk about introduction, and conclusion is just opposite of introduction. From general, just now we go for the specific to general, now general to specific, right? You see like specific here out there, and then from general ideas, we are now going to specific, right? Right. So many people, I don't know, we feel like a conclusion is a summary, but unfortunately, many professors says conclusion is not a summary. Rather, it presents how our work, how our research advances the field from the present state of knowledge. Means whatever we know, how our research is contributing, means the incremental contribution, right? So conclusion is basically presents you that, or presents the world that, look, this is what is the status quo, and this is how we are progressing. This is how we're advancing the knowledge. So we have to show that we are advancing the knowledge. So it also should clearly point out the limitations and future direction. Sometimes we're scared to put limitation, but we have to put the limitation because none of the study is without limitations, we believe. So just politely presenting limitation should be all right. And we also should provide some future direction, because when you provide future directions, then it shows that, this area can be extended. This knowledge can be advanced, right? So I think therefore we have to have some also a future direction of the research. And finally, we can have some recommendation for policymakers, how it can be implemented, right? All right. So I would say choose the right platform, and definitely priority matters. Let's see some of the things that I also want to, but this is not the, this is just this is how I ranked it, but it's not scientific, right? Again, I'm sharing it with you. This is not scientific. This is what I made it through. So you can see here, as a novice researcher or as a beginner, what we can do is that we can decide where we should submit our paper. Something like the level of difficulties, maybe the conferences. Normally conferences allow a novice researcher to present their ideas, because this is not the final word. This is just a checking whether our research are okay or not. So you can always start with the conference. You can present your paper and see whether your results, your method, your ideas are acceptable or not. Then even if you don't feel like you can reach to index journal, you can always try some non-index but not predatory, right? A book chapter also, then book, and this, I think the journal ranking is it doesn't make sense. It just, I put it this way. We have Emerald, we have Routledge, Sage, and all. I put level of difficulties. This is just my understanding. What I noticed is that Emerald Publishing, and I also had a chance last time talk to a few editors of Emerald journal, a few journals, right? What they mention is that the objective of Emerald journal is basically they nurture the young researcher. They don't care your profile. Basically, what they want to help you to grow. So therefore, I mean, you can see when you submit papers in Emerald, considerably you don't get much desk rejection. Rather, you get chance to revise. After few revision, you get it accepted. Many times it happened for the novice researcher. But if you go for some, I mean, different journals, maybe they have different policy like Elsevier or Springer or even Whaley. To some extent, you will see that the desk rejection is higher. So this is what I noticed, not scientific. I'm telling you again, repeat, this is not scientific. This is nobody had done. This is what when I went through, I feel like maybe the level of difficulties might be like this, all right? And these are the journal, basically they're hosting, sorry, these are the publisher, they're hosting journals, right? All right, now comes to publish or perish, what matters? Whether you can publish an article or you can't publish. What are the things that decide? What we notice, like normally reviewer, editors, right? Editorial board or even reviewers. This is what I feel they give a marks, like when students go for exam, right? we lecturers, we also decide like in a question, which part will get 2 marks, 3 marks, 4 marks, right? So when a paper comes to a reviewer or editor, right, we have some, you know, like somehow I'll say it's not scientific in nature, but it just, we have some allocation. Research topic, it gets 10%. Quality of writing, 20%. Materials and method, 30%. Literature review, 10%. Contribution, whether your paper is contributing, whether your paper has an incremental contribution. So that all together becoming 100. So if you feel like your paper, you know, like maybe the quality of writing is not that great, so I think we have to somehow help ourselves to learn how to write an academic paper, because it does matter, it has a point. Even materials and method, if we do not have a appropriate method, I'll not say right or wrong, it's about appropriate method. If we do not have appropriate method, sometime our paper get rejected. If we do not have comprehensive literature review, because it has a weight, it carries a weight, so maybe our paper will get rejected. Another one is the contribution, which about incremental contribution. Sometimes we write contribution, our paper has huge contribution, but what I personally believe is that in social science, we may not have a pure contribution, we call incremental contribution. Means we are adding one variable to, you know, like one of the study, or we are just extending our research. So it's not a pure in sense like a science or medicine, you know, they might have a pure contribution. For social science, we basically have an incremental contribution, right? Right. So as you see here, these are the 5 things: research topic, quality of writing, materials and method, literature review, and theory, literature and the theory, and contribution. So how basically your topic, whether you know that your topic will get 10 marks or not. How do you know your topic will get 10 marks or not? Maybe you can see these are the points. Some of the reviewers or editor might look at these things. What are the things they look? Whether this topic is making headlines, the topic that you're working on, the paper that you submitted, whether this topic is making headlines. Means, is it, like the COVID-19 nowadays, all the issue. Second one is whether there is a need to address this topic, because sometimes what happens is that there are so many problems, but maybe this has become an old problem. So we people, there is not a huge need to address this problem. Another one is whether it is a timely research or not. Like people are talking about all this robotic and all this. Yeah, people started working on it, but maybe still we think the robot and other things will come some in like 20 years time or 30 years time. So whether it is a timely research or not, or something that already backdated, right? Whether the issue has been neglected. Yeah, that's another issue. Another good things. Some topic maybe an old topic, but no, people has neglected it. So what you brought it up, and you say, look, this is a very important issue, it should not be neglected. Whether it is intrinsically interesting, meaning like whether the topic in nature is interesting or not. Sometimes like topic might be very boring, so because journal has a policy also, they want the readers to read and cite, so they want the paper to be interesting, right? Whether there is a contradictory findings about this topic. Sometimes what happens is somebody found A, somebody found B. So if there's a contradiction, if there's a debate, it makes interesting, right? Then whether it will be addressing a gap in the current literature. If our topic, whether it is thesis or paper, if it does not address the current gap in the literature, then it will not have a good contribution. So we always see whether there's a gap or not, whether your title is addressing a gap or not, right? The second one is the contribution of the paper, which I put 30%. This is just my personal assessment, all right? This is very, very important what I found. Nowadays, the top journals, based on my very tiny experience, what I noticed, they always look at the contribution. In what angle? Does this paper contribute theoretically? Does this paper contribute practically? Does this paper has a mathematical contribution? What contribution? So sometimes even in the introduction, we write up front, this paper contributes this way, 1, 2, 3, 4. We list it down because we want to show that, look, this paper has a contribution, right? Which is very, very important, right? And definitely it will also, we need to know that in what extent it will contribute to literature, in what extent it will contribute to theory, in what extent it will contribute to the method. Are you testing the theory or you are generating theory, right? Okay. Okay. The next one will be the literature review, which although I put a 10%, but I personally believe that literature review and the relation to the theory is very, very important, especially in academic research. When you do PhD, when we write a paper and publish in an academic journal, the theory is very, very important, especially in social science. And the topic that you are working on, whether it has a relation with the theory, how theory can explain your whole study, and how you are positioning your research in the literature, right? It's very important how you position your research, right? So does previous literature indicate that there is a need of this study? If the previous literature say didn't talk about that there is a need, then maybe people are not interested. Does it offer adequate understanding of current literature? Does it rationalize the significance of the problem? Does it evaluate current theoretical or policy issue and debates? Whether the findings can be explained using theory in related to in this related field? If the answers are yes, 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 means like, you know, this is an interesting topic. This is the things that you should be doing it, right? The fourth thing is about materials and method. I think I stressed again that we have to make sure that the readers can use the data and the method to replicate the paper by their own. Means we have to write in a very simple way. Sometimes we make it so complicated that people don't even understand that how we collected the data and how we run the model. So it became very complicated. So they don't read that materials and method part sometimes. So what we need to do, I can see that is maybe like we have to make the method very simple so that anybody can replicate. Even if we give them data, they can they can get the same conclusion, right? And what is the unit of analysis, right? Who is your sample? That's very important. You have to tell it, right? Is it a people? Is it a company, or what? Has the data been used appropriately to advance the themes that paper set out to address? Whether you are using the right data, right? What instrument, what questions, what variable are you using? Are they, are the questions valid? Are the variables, well thought? Are the proxies right proxies or not? So I think these are the questions we got to be asking, right? And are these, findings valid and related to the objective, right? So I think these are the things that we need to understand. The last things would be the clarity, structure, and quality of writing. I think we can't ignore this part of the world in Asian, right? Like being Philippines, I think Malaysia, Thailand, Bangladesh, and all this part of the world. Since the language, English is not our first language. So what happened is that we have, our hands are tied in a sense that we can't write very well. So, but at the end of the day, when you send a paper for international journal, right, a good journal, international in nature, so of course they want to have considerably good English so that the readers can understand the paper, right? So what we need to do first, does this paper manage to set a tone to clearly express its case? So we have to set a tone from the very beginning, from the first sentence, at least the, that look, this is what we want to do, very clear. Sometimes our case is not very clear. People only understand what we are doing after reading the whole paper. I think that shouldn't be the case. Maybe we should upfront in the introduction should be very comprehensive nature. So I heard many editors even just read only the introduction. Once they read introduction, they will know what you have in the paper. If your introduction is not very clear, if introduction failed to set a tone to clearly express what you want to do, then they reject the paper. So I think we have to set a tone in that sense, right? So that will be a very good one. And we also have to check our spelling, grammar, and all these things. We can always send for editing, right? And honestly speaking, what I'll see, like we have to report the findings in a very simple manner, very honest manner. Nothing, I think nothing wrong that we contradict whatever we found. Even it's contradictory with the literature is fine. You can say like, look, the other paper they found A and B is positively related, but we found negatively related. Perhaps because of the data, because of Malaysian culture is this, that, or so on, so. So it's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes we try to follow what others found, not necessarily, right? So we have to justify, right? Okay. So why basically our paper get rejected from ISI? I think there are some basic reasons. The first things that we see is a basic requirement. Normally, when you submit our paper in any journal, sometimes, as I said, we want to save time. So we don't really follow the guidelines given by the journal. like what format, how to, the words limit for the abstract and all these things. We don't really read. What we do, we just submit. And we think, never mind, when there will be correction, we will do the corrections. But actually, we want to save our time, but we want to waste the editor's time. So what editors does, in many occasions, if they see that you did not follow the requirement, journal requirement, the style, they reject it. So I think this always a good thing. Of course, it takes some of our time, but we have to follow the exact guidelines given by the journal. We need to read. I always, what I do is that I read at least 1-2 paper from that journal. I see their guidelines, or even some of the students that are working with me. I also, discuss with them that why don't we read a few papers and see what, the guidelines, the ways, even the way of citation, right? So once you make their, look like it's their paper, then they will more appreciate it. Oh, all right, the authors prepared the paper like, our journal requirements. So, okay, so you will get a positive. Then the second is, once it goes to reviewer, sometimes the reviewers can give a, major revision and all these things. And then there's a lot of way of rejection, right? So what are the general problems that we notice? That the first thing is submissions without following journal format. Save our time, but waste editor time. And sometimes it's not timely. The work you are doing, so for example, everybody is doing on COVID-19 and all this. Now you are doing something, a backdated topic. So they may not be interested. Issues are not important. Sometimes issues are not important. Then maybe the limited interest or coverage local issues. Maybe you're only covering Philippine context. Maybe you're only covering Philippine market or Malaysian market or Singapore market. When you cover only single market or or a small society, that time sometimes you don't have international readers. Therefore, when you consider US market, China market, or emerging markets, all European unions, then it has a greater interest. So therefore, sometimes it also a big factor, right? Not original. Sometimes we just replicate others' paper. So if it's a replication, in many occasions they reject the paper. Not appropriate for the journal. Data are old, irrelevant. Maybe now we should have a data until 2020, but you are using until 2015. If the data is very old, people tend to, or the editors tend to reject the paper. And of course, ethical issues, right? Scientific problem, I would say very unclear hypothesis. It should be very clear. Poor and weak design of the paper. Simple, the sample biased or too small. Sometimes, as I said, maybe you want to do that, what Malaysians like to have in the breakfast, right? You're making a conclusion, the Malaysians like to have breakfast, have nasi lemak in their breakfast. But you took sample only from one small state in Malaysia. So that would be biased. So when you make a conclusion, big conclusion about a country, but you are taking a small sample, 30 million people, you are taking only 100 people, and you say this is the habit of Malaysians. No. Therefore, this sample biased or too small sample is a big issue. All right? And also inappropriate statistics or inappropriate method that we use, right? Conclusions are not justified. References are outdated. That's another issue, so you see. Presentation, I think, is very important. You might have a very good story. You might have a very good findings. But if you do not know how to tell your story, if you do not know how to sell your story, then at the end of the day, we get rejected, right? So presentation style is very, very important. Sometimes we can't really organize our thought. No, and some small mistakes, dry tables means we don't explain what the table is talking about. Then a lot of figures we put which are needless, means we do not need to put too many figures. Whatever we present in a paper should be sound, make sense. It should be connected, A to Z, from the first line to the last line. If it is connected, people can see from beginning to end the road, the tunnel. If they can put the biscope and can see the tunnel from beginning to end, means your paper is very clear. So that is what very important, right? Right. And of course, the other things like duplicating the plagiarism and all these things, right? These are the do's and don'ts when submitting the papers. What are things we should do? Examine the scope of the journal and the description of its content. Then we have to format the paper appropriately, follow the journal, prepare a cover letter, not only saying that we are submitting the paper. Sometimes it's very important, cover letter. When you write to a journal, you see many journals, they they ask you to produce a cover letter. So in the cover letter, you can precisely write, our paper is basically addressing this big problem, this. So therefore, we believe it will increase the reader of the journal. So that will basically interest the editor. So, wow, it will increase the readership of the journal citation, because this is a business model of the journal. So they will also look for their interest, right? They will not only look for our interest, but they will also have their own interest. So therefore, if they find your paper has some contribution, have something new that people would love to study or love to read and cite, then they would accept. Therefore, sometimes we have we can write in a very simple word in our cover letter that, look, these are the things, right? We can also suggest some referees, some of the journal asking for referees. We can always suggest that, also help us, right? And if possible, sometime we can send for English editing before we send the papers, all right? I think what I think we shouldn't do it, assume that everything is hunky-dory once you submit hit the submitted button. Sometimes we just submit and we think like, oh, right, I have done. Not necessarily, right? So whenever we get a revision or whenever we submit a paper, we always have to be careful about looking at the requirements set by this one, right? And whenever you get a revision from the journal, make sure that you politely address each and every comments. Do not ignore. We shouldn't be ignoring. So what happens is that when you politely disagree, even we can disagree that we cannot address this problem because we have this, or we feel this way. I think it's fine, right? It's no problem. So that's, at least we have to address them. Many occasions we don't address, or we feel like revision means is rejection. Not necessarily, right? So we have to, that's one. The second thing I believe, that we have to have the willingness to make another revision. You always, like, after addressing all these things, you can write, we can always write to editor, like, the editors, we have tried our best to incorporate all the changes, yet if there is any need to change further, we are willing to do so. Trust me, that really helps, because that means it shows that you are eager to improve your paper. So that is another quality that maybe the editors want to see among the researchers, right? And include data that has been published previously. I mean, we shouldn't include. Sometimes we, like, some data is already published, we're using the same published data without citing and all this. And sometimes we highlight too much about limitation. So I think we also have to think about, we have to mention the limitation, but not all the time that this is the weakness of the paper, this is the weakness. If we all the time keep mentioning about the limitation of the paper, so I think then the reviewer will catch that point, and they will again bit from head to toe using that your own limitation, right? So I think what the last slide would be, what other things basically help you to go on with and give a better chance. I think we always have to set the priority where we want to publish, and we have to spend I think a good amount of time of searching good journal, right? And the second thing would be whenever we want to submit our paper in any journal, we should read at least few abstract or few journal article, few articles from that journal for the last 2-3 issues or last 1-2 years. So when you read their articles that are recently been published, we can somehow understand what type of paper they want, what type of paper they're basically looking for, right? And the writing style. So I think that is very important before you submit the paper. If we just simply, without following the the trend of the journal, we just submit our paper in the journal, the chances of getting rejected is very high. So I think therefore we need to study the journal before we submit our paper. We need to do research about the journal before we submit our research. So I think these are the things that we should be. And another way I think nowadays is building networking is very important. Build the network and collaboration. We can attend conferences, there are a lot of editors, associate around us. It's not unethical. What I'm meaning is that when you know the editors, associate editors, and all these things, at the end of the day, somehow these are the good people. They are doing research and all these things. So at least you know that what they are focusing on, what they are looking for in a paper. So you will have some knowledge, some connections. At least if the CEO paper name and paper, oh, this guy, oh, I happen to know him. So at least you might get a chance of getting your paper in the review, right? And we should always check our plagiarism, and we should edit the language before we submit if possible. But at least checking the plagiarism. We should go for Turnitin. We see what is the, because many journal, what happens is sometimes we don't check our plagiarism or turn it in, we just send it, but some journal automatically they can see your paper is 40% or 50% or 35% or like similarities, then they immediately reject it. So I think therefore sometimes we are not sure why you are taking from different sources, so we have high similarity index in plagiarism, or plagiarized work. So what we suggest and what I notice is that we should be running the Turnitin and see the percentage. Then we should reduce and make him like 10 to 15% maybe, and then submit, right? And definitely we have to keep our eyes on to the special issues. And some of the special issues, they're very interesting in a sense that they are very special in terms of issues, and it gets sometime published quite fast because there's a special editor for it. So there's nothing wrong going for special issues. So we can always keep looking at the journals that have special issues, so see whether your topic can fit this special issue, so that you will have get a chance of publishing things faster, right? I think with that note, I do have some research article, but if time permits, I would be sharing. Once again, I beg your pardon, being a very novice researcher, I know very little. And with that time, I tried my best to share my tiny knowledge with you all. Hope it helps. And with that note, I thank you for listening. You may ask if you have any questions, and I would try my best to shed some light on that questions. Thank you so much for the time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahman, for that very wonderful and informative lecture. We have learned so much from that, sir. And especially that some of the participants have just started to engage themselves in doing research. So many of us are also just starters. So with that, sir, we would like to ask some questions from our participants. Can I begin, sir?
Yeah, sure. Please.
Okay, sir. Sir, the first one is from Muhammad Abul Kalam Siddique, from one of our participants from the Facebook group Crossover. He is watching right now our live video. So do you think that the problem statement only for PhD or writing papers? And how about creating a problem that has both academic and practical implications? Could you please enlighten us with this? From Muhammad Abul Kalam Siddique.
So, sorry, I couldn't get your question. Sorry, can you repeat?
Okay, sir.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. I'll repeat the question. Do you think that a problem statement only for PhD or writing papers? How about if you are creating a problem that has both academic and practical implications? Could you please enlighten us?
Right. All right. I would try my best to shed light on this question. What I understand is definitely if we can have a problem that has both demand from the literature and also from the practical world, that would be wonderful. Surely, it's not about only doing PhD or masters or any research. We have also some action research. We really want to solve some real world problem. So if we have some real world problem and we can have data to understand the problem and propose some policy, that will be great, wonderful. But what happens is that in many occasions we may not have, or we are not very lucky enough to have both both problems coming from literature and also practical. Sometimes maybe we have some gaps and some problems or theoretical problem that are basically in academic life, not in real world. Sometimes we have a real life problem, but it's difficult to solve by using academic theories. So not many occasions we are lucky enough to have together, gel it together and use the theory to have some or propose some solution by doing some analysis and come up with some solution. So I think definitely what you ask, I think that is very relevant and ideal situation. But sometimes, unfortunately, we don't have both together. So we have to be satisfied with one of them sometimes. Sometimes we get both. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahman. And that's why your lecture will really guide us in coming up with our problem statement. And that's why some of the participants are also asking if they can have the copy of your presentation materials. So I guess our resource speaker already agreed on that we will be sending
the
presentation
I'll share. This time around,
materials.
I will share. Yes, I will share.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Rahman. Sir,
Right.
another question from our participants, from Professor Jesse Quieres. So with the presented research ecosystem, where do you have to present your research frameworks, the theoretical and conceptual? So again, with the presented research ecosystem, where do you have to present your research frameworks, the theoretical and conceptual?
All right. So once, based on my understanding, when we go to literature review, right, we read the literature and try to find out the problems and issues, like basically, and the gaps. So based on the issues, problems, gaps, right, we try to come up with a framework, a conceptual framework, like basically what are the things, what are the issues that we will be discussing or investigating together. So when we put all these issues together, all these variables or gaps together, and we want to study, that are basically conceptual framework, right? And when we start with the conceptual framework, time goes by, it become a research framework, because we start to have variables with the measurements, we start to have hypotheses, we put all the hypotheses and link, and it become a research framework. But before we have all the hypotheses, we are basically having ideas. When you have ideas, when you have issues, we link the ideas from our mind and we put on the paper. So that are basically conceptual paper before we really put into hypothesis. But once we hypothesize the relationship based on the previous literature and we want to test it, then basically it become a research framework. So that's how we basically differentiate a bit of like conceptual framework and research framework. But basically this framework guides us to execute the research. So they are our like prototype, as I said, the building prototype. So they are giving a structure, like this is the way we want to get the answer. Yeah, right.
Thank you very much for the enlightenment, Dr. Raman. Sir, our Professor Jesse Quieres has a follow-up question. Yes, sir. So if we follow, they are very interested with what you discussed, sir. And if we follow the problem statement template presented in our proposed paper, how can we avoid plagiarism? As this will be picked up by the software as plagiarized.
Sorry,
Would you,
I don't know, I have some, I can't really hear. Yeah, can you
okay,
repeat again
sir,
for a second?
I'll repeat.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we follow the problem statement template presented in our proposed paper, how can we avoid plagiarism, as this will be picked up by the software as plagiarized?
Right. So I think when you talk about plagiarism, right, is basically word to word. When we have word to word copying from somewhere, of course it will be plagiarized. But when we get the idea from literature or from our previous paper, from other paper, right, we can keep the same meanings, but different way of presentation, different writing, different way of writing the sentences. So it just we have to make sure that the meaning is same, but we rephrase or synthesize the statements, right? So that's how we try to somehow avoid the plagiarism, but it's difficult. But it's not that you can't, you have to have a zero plagiarism. No, 5 to 10% is fine. Few words is fine. But as long as you are not copying pasting from somewhere or someone idea, then it's fine. So therefore, what I believe is that if you are sure about what is the problem and if you are very clear about it, then you can write from your own word. Use your own word first. You don't have to use any bombastic word or from literature directly as it is. No. First, we need to understand the problem very well. Did I really understand the problem? If yes, then let's put this problem on the paper from like our own English, our own write-up and own ways of writing. Then we try to make it academic. We develop it, but we can't do it overnight. Nothing happens overnight. That's why I always say, like, we can go to the literature, we can go to the practical world, we can go to the all sort of resources. We get the things from there, then we put it together, then we start to think how to get the gist idea and we write our own word. I think that's how we might be able to reduce the plagiarism. Yeah, but not overnight. It will take time. We are slowly changing it, making it sense. Then we keep testing it again whether the plagiarism is high or not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we really have to restate everything in our own words without losing the idea. Okay.
Right.
And sir, is there a specific number of literature or studies to call it a comprehensive literature review? Again, is there a specific number of literature or studies to call it comprehensive literature review?
Well, I think it's very important, but difficult question. I would say there is no specific number that we can just basically mention like, okay, this 100 articles would be sufficient. I think as long as the area is saturated. What do I mean is that, so for example, you are doing a literature about a topic. Maybe you are doing a topical literature. So somehow if you search best of your knowledge and cover most of the recent literature around that topic, and you are not receiving any new information, most of the literature is talking about same thing, then you can stop there. So when you stop receiving new information or new literature, then I think that is the cutoff point might be, right? But if you keep on receiving new, say for example, A is related to B, you found A is related to B. So you keep on searching this A, say with 10 articles say A is related to B. Then you keep on searching, and then say at the one of time, you search 100 article, and the 100 article all are say A is related to B with the positive, say for example. Meaning you are not receiving any new information. Is everybody is saying they are positive related. So if you find in a case like after 10 or 15 article, you found like most of the recent article is talking about same positive relationship, maybe that can be the cutoff point that you can stop about, and you can say you did a good number of reasonably comprehensive literature review.
Thank you very much, sir. That's very well noted, and that's very clear. Sir, some people say, this is from Professor Christine Igna. So some people say that the limitations and recommendations are the areas where your research is lacking or incompetent. Okay. So what can you say about this? Is this true? Does this mean that one should not put that many limitations and recommendations? Would you like me to repeat, sir?
Right. No. I think I got
Okay.
that point, if I'm not mistaken. I think it is. I think it is the truth. It is the truth that we will have a limitation, but surely if we have, a very big limitation, so for example, a core limitation, then people start to question. But say for example, you should have been taking, you have taken a survey, say for example, 900 people, which are reasonably your sample size and your formula, everything say 900 is fine. I mean, reasonably well. But yeah, you can say, people can take more sample, and this is our limitation that we only took 900, although it's 30 million people, maybe people should take 10,000, but we managed to take only 900. So this limitation is fine as long as it doesn't violate the basics. If you take only 100 or 50, then this limitation is a problem. But if you take a reasonably if you have done a reasonably good job with limitation, it's fine. Sometimes even say for example, methodology, a method that the method that you use, the model that you have used. So maybe you have used a model and you violated most of the assumptions. So if this is the case, then people will question. But of course, none of the model is perfect. So you can say like, look, according to these assumptions, according to this assumption, this model is appropriate, although the another assumption is violated. So I think if you, as long as you satisfy like 80 to 90% of the, or you cover 80 to 90% of the desire of that area, I think the 10% limitation is accepted.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, sir. Sorry if I have more questions because they are really into your topic. So I'll be asking, I think two more questions. Would that be okay?
Sure, sir.
Okay,
Sure,
sir. Thank
sure,
you.
sure.
Okay. Is it really necessary to formulate hypotheses for a qualitative research study? That is from Professor Farouk Awan. Again, sir, is it necessary to formulate hypotheses for a qualitative research study from Professor Farouk Awan?
All right. From my point of view, it's not necessary for qualitative, especially for qualitative research. It is not necessary to have a hypothesis, but quantitative, yes. Mostly we expect to have, or we expect to produce hypothesis for quantitative, because quantitative, we basically want to see the causal relationship, the relationship between A and B. But when it's qualitative, basically you are explaining a phenomena. When you're explaining a phenomena or event, it doesn't have to have a hypothesis. We shouldn't even presume what's the relationship. So for example, just give you an example. Someone working in a company, and why she comes late to office. So you want to know why she comes late every day in the office. So basically you ask around his colleagues, or maybe his family member, or the bus drivers, or many things you ask. So basically you don't have to formulate a hypothesis that what's the relationship between bus and her coming late. Not necessarily, because you want to know that things are unknown. So basically you want to explore actually what is the reason behind it. No relation, it doesn't have to have any relationship, just you want to know the reason. Therefore I feel like in qualitative research, it is not necessary to have a hypothesis. But in some context, I see that they are using in vivo and all this, they want to test it. Some they propose, right? But of course, there's a different school of thought. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And this is the last question for our
Sure.
session. Sir, recently, if there are limited recent reviews, will older literature reviews be considered still appropriate?
Sorry again, sorry.
If there are limited recent literature,
Right.
will older literature reviews be considered still appropriate?
All right.
The
So
older literatures.
right. So if you review some old literature, it's not that you can't do literature. I mean, do old literature review. No. What I feel is that in each and every field there are some core paper, right? So for example, in finance, you can see Farmer and Friends. In the behavioral finance, Daniel Kahneman and Richard Thaler, 1979. So there are some core paper, base paper. So there is no harm when you do a literature review for the theory, when you do a literature review for some assumptions, all this core idea, of course you have to do the old, you have to refer to the old literature. But when it comes to findings, A is related to B is related to C. When it comes to findings, it's always better to look for the recent articles, because we need to see different papers, different authors, whether they found the same thing or not. So therefore it's always nice to have what the recent people found, what the recent paper has found about the relationship. So but if we do not have enough recent literature, or we don't really get all the literature, or maybe separate COVID-19 is a very new issue, so we may not have new literature. But then in that case, of course, we can have related literature like Spanish flu, all other related literature that might support the COVID cases. And another one is that I think we should always try different sources. Sometimes we have limited resources. We don't have access of good journals, maybe. We don't have databases. We don't have access to many databases. So sometimes we have limitation to get recent articles. And I would again say, some of us, we only focus on index journal article. It means like, all ISI, and it's fine. We always have to focus on the good journal article. We can go for index, but it's nothing harm or nothing wrong to go for non-index also. We can even search in Google if there's any paper related to that, even though it is not published in good journal, but who knows, we can read the paper and they might have something good to offer. So we can read that paper. We don't have to ignore. Sometimes some of the school of thought, they somehow argue that we shouldn't go for non-index journal. But what I feel, this is what my understanding is that Nothing wrong to get an idea. Who knows, some novice researcher, they couldn't reach index journal, so they end up publishing in normal journal, but they have a good idea, they have a good findings. So nothing harm, we read the paper first. If the paper sounds well, if the paper's methodology is sound, definitely we can refer to. Therefore, I think like sometimes we are a bit like ignoring. So maybe to have recent literature, apart from looking at the index journal, we can also look at non-index journal, search for the Google, and all this. So then maybe whatever numbers we get, we have to politely present it. Sometimes if we do not have enough recent literature, then we have to say, based on our knowledge, based on researcher knowledge, this is what we have observed from these current papers, which are not many in nature. So we can always like being very humble and present it, and definitely trust me, that's how the reviewers or the editors will be loving it, rather than saying that we have covered everything. So I mean, being like that. So I don't know. I tried my best to answer, sir.
Actually, sir, that's a very nice and very clear and on point answer. So thank you very much. And at this point, we would like again to express our sincere gratitude. Sir, thank you for accepting our invitation to be our resource speaker in this fifth webinar, The Science of Writing Research Papers and Theses.